Today's guest is a singer-songwriter with over 1.2 million monthly listeners on Spotify. And she's sharing how to find your own style, your own process, and your own path in a highly competitive industry while living in a city where the best of the best live and work. She's also going to tell us her journey of following her passion with no backup plan. Welcome to this episode of She Made It. I am your host, Elle Zimmerman, and I am joined, as always, by my lovely co-host, Clara.
Hi, Elle.
I have to be honest. So, Megan Davies is someone that I've been listening to on Spotify for a couple years, actually. And I was totally fangirling during this conversation. And when I read about 1.2 million listeners monthly, I think I'm probably a majority of those.
You just have her albums on repeat.
I actually do. I mean, I'm just going to get into it with it. She is like this master of, first of all, she's an incredible guitarist. She's got this beautiful voice. She's a songwriter and creates these mashups. And so I have this just real appreciation for not just her performance, but her just the sensitivity to taking music and making it something so different in the way she shares what she shares.
Yeah, she's really good, and her covers are so cool. So I'll just go ahead and plug her now. Go check her out on Spotify. Just type in Megan Davies, and she will come up.
Yeah, Megan is she's a pure musician, pure artist. But what I learned from talking with Megan that you'll get to hear more about is that she just talks a lot about the creative process. She talks about inspiration and when we're in a creative rut. And I think that applies to all of us. We don't have to be a professional artist, professional musician to tap into the life-giving power of our creativity.
Totally. And I think that her mindset for no backup plan and following her passion no matter what is such a beautiful mindset to share and to apply in anyone's life, regardless of whether or not they themselves are an artist. And it also does totally remind me of your creative uncovery process that you use to help women uncover what their passion is and then start making moves to incorporate it more and more into their life, whether that does become a business or an artistic career or not. It could just be making more time for a hobby that you really love. But we're so excited to be able to offer Creative Uncovery to our podcast listeners.
And they can find that where, Clara?
The best place to go is ellzimmerman.com. And on the front page of the website, you'll see in big letters, it says Clarity Call. So this is a totally free 1-hour call with Elle to kick off that journey. And there's no commitment, no pressure for the call. So you can do the call and that's it. But it's a really beautiful way to get started on the creative uncovery journey.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I just so love the Clarity Call experience because, it really is an opportunity to just sort of spend some time chatting with me. And I guide you through this series of questions that really just sort of begin to unlock. Like the questions that I get often are, I don't know what to do next, or I don't really even know what my creative purpose is. And so the Clarity Call is this opportunity to just start that opening up to what that possibility could be for you.
Totally. And of course, the other main way that we do that is through this podcast. The whole point is for other people's journeys to inspire women to start their own journey. And so I wanted to share a review that we got from HS Carla OH. And she shares, She Made It is a podcast of inspirational stories of women's journeys and how they got from A to B. This includes what motivated them, inspired them, and even what failures they had along the way. Elle encourages us to take heart and think about some things differently during this time of the pandemic so that at the end we can say, I made it with a smile. Thanks, Elle. That one's just so sweet. And that's the whole point, that when you hear that one woman made it, to believe that you can too, not to fall into comparison and think, oh my gosh, how could I ever do that? But to really show the journey. So if that speaks to your heart, we would love to hear from you too. If you would like to leave a review on this podcast, we would be so thankful. This is actually the main way that new listeners can find our show. The more reviews we have, the more likely Apple Podcasts is to show this podcast to more people. So the easiest way to do that is through the Apple Podcasts app on your phone or iTunes on your computer. And if you feel a little lost, you can go to elzimmerman.com/review. All the instructions are there for how you can leave a review. And hey, we might just read yours on the podcast next time.
One thing that, Megan is one of those guests that we didn't know Megan. I really did love her on Spotify. And I just said, you know what, let's just reach out and see if she'd be willing to join us. And she said yes. And boy, was it a beautiful surprise, how authentic and humble, but crazy creative she is and crazy talented. And so I'm really, really honored to have her as our guest. And Claire, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about her before we jump in.
Of course. So Megan is an independent recording artist, songwriter, and producer. And her career began when she started uploading acoustic covers and mashups to YouTube. Since then, her music has garnered over 750 million streams and views across all digital platforms, SiriusXM radio play and TV show and commercial placements. While Megan does really enjoy producing covers and mashups, and it's what she's most well known for, her true passion lies in writing and performing her own original music. Her debut original project, Bad Poetry EP, was released in 2017, and acoustic versions of many of these songs were also released on her Acoustic Collections EP in 2020. So stay tuned for Elle Zimmerman's inspiring conversation with Megan Davies.
So welcome to this episode of She Made It. I am so excited about our guest today. Welcome, Megan Davies.
Hi.
Where are you?
Happy to be here.
Yeah, and Megan, where are you today?
I'm in Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay, Nashville. That makes sense, right? So, Megan, it's a rainy day. Yeah, that's where we live in that part of the country where we never know what kind of weather we're going to get. Because I'm in Cincinnati, just north of you.
Yeah, not too far.
Yeah. So I shared with Megan a little bit before our conversation that I'm such a huge fan, and I'm actually a little nervous about our conversation today because I've been listening to your music. I've been, I guess the things that I love about it so much, first of all, I play guitar, not like you do. But as a child, my parents couldn't afford a piano, and I so desperately wanted to learn an instrument. Piano was out of the budget, so they bought me a JCPenney guitar. So you can imagine it's this like tiny guitar with plastic strings with like this nylon case that was probably not even $30. And so I learned to play guitar on that, and then I progressed to a more a little bit more, what do we call it? Like actual instrument.
Right.
But so when I listen to your music, I have this appreciation for the artistry, for the complexity, for your skill as an arranger of music, and then you have this incredible voice on top of that. So I'm a little nervous. So
oh wow, well that's like so kind. I feel like I'm mostly an internet artist sometimes. So a lot of times, it's not until I travel or go on tour and play shows, which isn't super often, that I get to really have conversations with people who've listened to the music and enjoyed it. And, because you can see comments online, but it's, talking to people who've discovered it online and, especially from like a different place, completely different city and listen to the music is always like just super fun.
Because I am also a singer, my background is musical theater. I studied at the Cincinnati Conservatory of Music. And so even though I started playing guitar as a young girl and I played in church, I didn't pursue that because singing was kind of my first love. And I find it like the harmonies that you write, the arrangements, you and your sister, you and lots of other people, that is incredible. And is it you that's writing that? Is it a collaborative thing? Where do those arrangements and harmonies come from?
Yeah, so that is that's me, I guess. One of my favorite things is like, even though I'm technically a solo artist, I guess, I really love playing music with other people. Um, so when I do videos for YouTube, one of the first things I do is get together with the artist, or even if it's my sister, and I mean, we basically just have like a jam session. Like it just goes right back to like me being in a band in high school and just like having fun playing guitars together and work on the arrangement, but also try to let that jam session kind of naturally dictate what the arrangement will be for the cover.
Yeah, and the other thing that I love is that you take some songs that don't feel like they would ever work on a guitar, or they have an iconic artist, and you like my favorite one is I Want to Dance with Someone.
Okay, cool.
And that on guitar with your voice, the way I hear the words differently, the way the story comes through, whether it's through the way you decide to phrase something, or it's really, I hear songs for the first time when I'm listening to the way you've arranged them and put them together.
Thank you. That's like a huge compliment. I mean, that's what I love to do. I don't do too many songs that are already acoustic based. I like, Jacqueline and I we'll take like rap songs sometimes,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
really
Yep.
like kind of put them on an acoustic guitar, and sometimes you're just like, oh wow, these lyrics actually kind of come, all of a sudden sound like sad, or like have like a different emotion to them, and it's kind of fun sinking into that. But I would
Yeah.
say it's ironic because so I majored in songwriting in college, and it is slightly ironic that I became such like a big like cover artist. And but I wonder sometimes if it did lend itself in some ways to being able to flip a song a little bit, or hear a song um in my own voice a bit easier. I don't know it, but it's kind of, I mean, it's funny. I kind of laugh at it sometimes just because of that turn of career, I guess.
Yeah, and just before we move away from the music, because I do want to talk about sort of like the journey that you've been on to how you landed where you are. But the other part of your music I want to just sort of just lean into and just tell you how much I love is not just the way you interpret the song into an acoustic version, but also the way you, I guess it's called mashup, the combination of the songs, and how, like, one of my favorite ones right now is Landslide and Everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, just how it just tells the story in a completely new way. It like takes it on a journey beyond what the one song by itself can do, and how it weaves in.
Wanna be with you everywhere. Oh, I wanna be with you everywhere. Wanna be with you everywhere. Wanna be with you. Take my love, take it down. Oh, climb a mountain and turn around. Wanna be with you everywhere. My reflection in the snow.
It's really, really magical for me, and I know that's part of what people are responding to is not just this incredible arranging, songwriting, but the sensitivity that you have. And you said, as you hear the lyrics, it's like it tells a story that we hadn't even really heard. And you're willing to open that up through collaboration, through, just playing. I love that.
Right. Yeah, that mashup in particular, I'm really proud of. And when we did it, I still remember like the moment Jacqueline and I figured how those figured out how those two songs would fit together, and I was just like, oh, this is it. Like, you know, how that chorus would fit on top of, because that's the thing with our mashups is, you know, there's, and I don't know that there was anyone quite doing it like this on YouTube before we started doing it, but you know, because there would be medleys where you just sing a verse chorus of one song and then a verse chorus of another song kind of in the same song. But then we would take and, you know, two songs and literally sing them on top of each other.
Yeah.
And I think when we first started doing it, it was a like kind of just fun. Like it was, you know, we were figuring out like, oh, so many songs have the same exact chords. But I mean, you said you studied music, and you know, there's something in classical music called counterpoint, which is when you have these two opposing melodies as opposed to, you know, just harmonies, or, you know, one prominent melody with harmonies. You have these two melodies kind of like
Stephen Sondheim for me.
Yeah, like kind of coexisting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really unique like phenomenon when that happens, and we will like incorporate that, and then we'll, you know, bounce back to just harmonizing this song or this song. And yeah, those are particularly fun to work on.
Yeah. So again, before we end the episode, we're going to let everybody know how they can hear you, see you, learn more, get your music. You know, we'll put it in the show notes, all that. So I'm sure everybody who has not heard you is super curious, and I encourage you to listen. It's awesome. Yeah. So what I'd love to do is sort of now take the journey with you. Like, what was one of the questions that I often ask my guests is, what is your first creative memory?
You know, I think, at least as far as music is concerned, you know, neither of my parents were musical. They weren't like musicians. My mom, I think, has a musical ear, but they weren't musicians at all. And I found a guitar in my grandparents' basement. It was like from the 70s, and my mom had taken like 2 lessons on it and never played it again. And was like, "Can I take this home?" And my grandparents like, yes. And so I took it home, and I just remember learning like the chords on it, like trying to like discover the chords. And I remember learning like AC/DC, like the
Yep.
dun, dun, dun. But every like little bit I learned about it, it just was like this like whoa, like discovery of and I didn't know anyone who played guitar at the time, so I was just like, this was just this mystery of an instrument. And you know, I remember trying to figure out chords of the songs that I liked, and you know, I was probably listening to like Avril Lavigne or someone at the time, you know, and I just remember trying to figure out chords, and then also like starting to write my own songs, and it was just such this magical time of exploration.
How old were you?
I think I was probably like 11, maybe like 11, maybe 12. And I could not learn things fast enough. And I was just, and I like the internet, YouTube really wasn't like a thing yet. So I would go to like this local music store, and they had like chord books. And I would just buy like books on like, you know, you could buy an album, like a book that had like an album of Sheryl Crow songs or something. And then you go home and like try to play along with like the CD and stuff. And but that was kind of, I think, the beginning of me like really deep diving into my creativity.
The other interesting thing that I did not know, because I've done a little reading about you, and I didn't know that you studied songwriting, because I would have thought you studied guitar or voice.
Yeah, so I actually did. I started off as a guitar major, and I was a guitar major for 3 years. And this is kind of a long side story, but I actually injured my elbow junior year. And
oh, that doesn't work well for guitar playing.
No, it does not. And so I switched my major to songwriting, honestly, to graduate on time.
Oh, that's so interesting.
It was, but I had been taking all the songwriting courses as electives, so it was actually not that hard of a switch, but and then they ended up giving me like a guitar minor. Kind of, I think they just felt bad because I was like so close to, to
Yeah.
finishing it. But in music school, everything like where you are, as far as graduation is concerned, is all tied to how many semesters of lessons you take. So
Right.
if you miss 2 semesters of lessons, you're kind of putting your graduation off quite a bit. So I ended up switching, but I was a guitar major for most of my time, which was interesting. I was like uh, the only girl
Hmm.
out of like, and there was like 50 guys, and then I think the second year there was another girl that joined, but
Whoa.
it
Why
was
is that?
very, I don't know, it's
So where were all the girls? Were they in piano and flute and voice?
voice, yeah, voice
Voice, yeah.
probably. I mean, it was definitely one of the only instruments that had that disparity, I think. But yeah, I don't know. Like it was, honestly, for me, it was baffling. I remember like at my first day of like the guitar major like seminar and being like, wow, this is like, because I remember at my art school there was, a handful of really amazing female guitar players, or at least people that were interested in pursuing it. So it really never occurred to me
That's
that
really
it was
interesting.
super male dominated. Which looking back, I'm like, how did I not know that? But
Oh, yeah.
but yeah, it was that was like an interesting. It was just it was interesting. It was something to navigate in a sense. Like how to like fit in, I guess.
Right, right.
Uh, but yeah, I don't know. I managed it, and um, it's just it's an experience.
Yeah. In hindsight, do you wish you had the guitar major? Are you happy with the songwriting major? Like it's for me, I'm just sort of connecting the dots a little bit. Like I'm hearing you talk about the discovery of an abandoned guitar that, sort of in a way your mother provided for you because she wanted the guitar lessons, but it wasn't her passion. If only she knew that it was really your passion coming through. And then this flip to songwriting, and now here you are, a solo artist, creating these incredible arrangements, writing your own music. I guess, what do you feel about that
um,
transition?
at the time, I think it was frustrating, um, but so the music major, the guitar major, was very intense. It was when you're doing the Bachelor of Music, you have a lot of 0 credit courses like ensembles and things like that
Right.
you're
Yeah.
required to take, that take up a lot of time, um, that you really were just so busy all the time, always practicing. And when I switched to songwriting, and it may have been, granted, like Belmont, I think, had just started the songwriting major. So it was very new. It could be completely different. But all of a sudden I had all this time. Like I was taking all these like extra classes of like, I was able to do an internship. I like interned at a publishing company. And I really, I mean, just kind of embraced the like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll just take like a course in copyright, or, because I had all these extra, all this extra time really. So I was writing probably more after I injured my elbow, than I was before that. So I truly believe it was a blessing in disguise in a weird way.
Yeah.
Of course, when you're in the middle of it, it seems very like confusing and like because I think a lot of it came out of like, oh, what am I going to do?
Sure.
Because when you have the looming graduation, and you're a music major, and there's not quite a defined career path as far as how you're going to make money after college, it gets a little anxiety inducing towards the end there. So I think I was just trying, like, well, let me learn about music publishing and learn about this, and you know, it did work out. But yeah, I think, there is a part of me that wishes I finished with a guitar degree, just because it was something I started. But at the same time, it, you know, I think certain things are meant to happen. And it led me to where I am today, which I'm, super grateful for.
Yeah, because when it really comes to it and you're standing on stage performing, nobody cares.
Right. They're not looking at your resume.
Right.
Of like,
And
did you finish that degree?
right. Are you qualified to be standing up there playing guitar professionally? Yeah, and so I think it's kind of interesting how then all sort of like the business side, the songwriting side became accessible to you. So I guess the other thing you said when you mentioned, oftentimes we think of college as the jumping point to a job. And when you go into the arts, when you go into music, that is not guaranteed. It's not, most often you're told, don't even expect it. And it's, again, in musical theater, it's like the odds of getting a role are, 1 in 100. You have to go through 100 auditions to get a yes, 100 no's to get a yes. So where did your creative vision come from?
I think part of it was probably being a little bit naive of that. At least going into college and choosing to get a degree, or at least just having that that outlook of like, I can do anything I put my mind to. I think my parents really were encouraging of that. But, of course, the realities of it set in, that junior and senior year when you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to need to like make some real money here after graduation. And there really isn't like, what does that look like? Do I go work at Guitar Center? Do I get a job at a coffee shop? Like, it's really not like my sister, she went to physician assistant school. So it was pretty clear that you become a physician assistant afterwards. This, career path, not so much. So what I ended up doing was that internship that I had turned into a temp position, which turned into like, very low paying music industry administration job. So I was, kind of had a little bit of a foot in the door, was kind of learning, and it sustained, me to allow me to stay in Nashville and eat and, pay for rent. But yeah, that's something that's, one of the downsides of studying the arts, I think, in college. But, you got to do what feels right. And for me, there's just this sense of like, I don't see myself doing anything else.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't want to do anything else. So, there was just really no other, like, there's no backup. It was just like, okay, this is what I'm doing. So that probably helped too. Like there was never a plan B.
So, and I get that because, it's in theater, it was the same thing. We were always told if you even have an inkling of imagining yourself doing something different, go.
Right.
Because there's too much sacrifice in this career path. And some people, have great opportunities, and some people it's, the process is part of the passion. But what do you do with self-doubt though? Because when you're starting, and I know probably even harder than theater, the music industry is hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It is, it's a psychological thing too. I mean, just living in Nashville alone, you go from being, maybe one of a handful of musicians, like in a smaller city, or like, everybody else who's performing around town. And, maybe you're one of the better ones. I don't know, but you come to Nashville and I mean, there's probably like tens of thousands of people trying to do the same thing. And honestly, a lot of them sometimes are better than you, like, or, at least on a technical level. And it is like, you kind of have to change your perspective of comparing yourself to people, things like that can be very dangerous. And and at least to improving yourself. And yeah, I don't, it's hard to say exactly where that comes from. I think it really does stem from like, there is nothing else that I want to do. And I think I would have, like, regardless of what decisions I've made, even if I didn't end up going to Belmont, my first choice school was actually NYU. And I got in, and it was just too expensive. My parents were like, you don't want to take on those loans, you know, like, and I was just devastated because I wanted to be in New York City. I saw myself, you know, being this like independent artist in this, you know, in New York. And they were like, you're not going to be a heart surgeon. You're not going to be making, you know, like tons of money. You don't want those student loans. And, you know, that was tough. You know, but I don't know. It like, you really, I think part of it too is being able to dive really microscopically into your craft and just focus on those little like incremental improvements of being like, okay, like I feel like my songwriting is getting better every year. I feel like my guitar playing, or, you know, just focusing on those smaller things helps, like, you know, rather than always focusing on like the bigger picture of like, oh my gosh, where is my life headed?
Right. That's really, really insightful. I'm just going to tell you I just want to repeat that because so many people get caught in that trap of comparing themselves to someone who's much further along on their journey. And then they say, can't ever be that. I'm not that. Well, no, you're not that today, but focus on today. What are you doing today? What do you do on your worst day though?
I really personally, I get a lot from just stepping outside of my musical lane. I get a lot of satisfaction from like, you know, like reading or, you know, watching, just like immersing myself in some other type of creative world that I'm not, you know, working like making a living from.
Mm-hmm.
So actually something I've been doing this pandemic is I've been taking drum lessons, which honestly, I'm an acoustic musician. Like, when am I going to play drums? You know,
But I love it because it's
um,
another sort of what I would assume male dominated instrument.
yeah, that is kind of
And
a
there
male
you are.
dominant. You know, but I was just like, I've always wanted to learn them, and like, there's no pressure to like be great at it, but there is kind of this incremental progress thing that's like, oh, like I'm like getting better at this, and you know, and just being able to like focus in on like the small kind of wins. And but that's what's really cool about practicing, and I've always had a very kind of meditative approach with practicing. You know, I love that you can play something 20 times one day and the next day it's like a little bit easier. I like take a lot of like satisfaction kind of from that, and, you know, approach it like I love kind of like the focusing on that, and I find it very like calming sometimes.
That is really incredible because, you know, I have 3 kids because I didn't get to play piano, as I said earlier, of course, they were playing piano. They had piano lessons, which of course they didn't appreciate, they didn't want to do. But I love your perspective of the practice as meditation. That's really, really cool.
I will say I also took piano lessons when I was a lot younger and did not do anything with them. Like,
Yeah.
I was definitely one that my parents were like, well, she's not going to be a musician. So, you know,
Funny.
sometimes you got to
Yeah.
find you got to find the one that speaks to you. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know.
So when I was finding some information about you and you said something about that you don't believe in being the best at music anymore. Do you remember saying that?
Yeah, that sounds like something I'd say.
What does
No,
that mean to you? What does that mean to you?
well, I think that was like one of those perspective changes I had to adopt when I first moved to Nashville. And there was just, you know, you're surrounded by people that are, you know, technically better than you at playing an instrument. And, you know, I remember at this art school I went to in high school, like there were such few guitar players and like instrumentalists that there was like a little competition, not like, you know, like more of like a fun kind of thing. Like, oh man, like I just learned this cool thing and like, you know, or I just learned this cool part and, you know, like how fast can you play the scale? And, you know, there was like a technical like way of measuring like how good you were.
And I do think at that age, that's how we do figure out where we are. It is through comparing to peers, and sometimes school is even set up to do that. You know, they put people in the middle, or they put people, you know, but that's interesting. So I'm sorry, keep going.
Right. No, yeah, exactly. And, you know, so that was something that absolutely existed. And I always got a lot of confidence from, frankly. And I remember, but you come to Nashville and
you're so humble. Just say it. I was the best. I was the best in high school. Just say it, you know?
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. Well, you know, I don't know. Like I definitely just got a lot of confidence from being able to hold my own. And but yeah, you come to Nashville, let me tell you, like there are so many incredible, like technically incredible musicians in, you know, in every single like genre. And I had to like not do that as much. Like I really had to just stop doing that. And I had to, instead of focusing on being like technically the best at things, I think it forces you to find your own voice in a way. Like what makes me different than the 20 other guitar players in this room. And you kind of have to like do some self reflection, I feel like, creatively, because at a certain point, like, you know, it doesn't matter. Like, it does not matter how fast you can play like a Spanish Phrygian scale, like, or, you know, something super nerdy. I think, and I think it was a good thing. Like, it was really, really, really good. Like, that's something I'm really grateful for, that I was able to change that. Cause frankly, like, what's way more important than that is learning how to communicate with an audience and evoke emotion. And, you know, I'm happy that like I got stopped in my tracks with that kind of like perspective of like, okay, this isn't even useful.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like you do kind of have to stop you know, comparing yourself technically to people. But then also I've kind of adopted of like, if I hear someone that's like an amazing guitar player or an amazing songwriter or singer-songwriter, like instantly I want to work with them. Like I want to make a video with them. You know, I want to like tour with them. I want to just kind of like stand next to them and like, you know, be inspired by them. And instead of feeling like I need to be like better in a sense.
Yeah, it's the whole concept of, you know, is your mindset toward abundance or is it toward scarcity? Are you living in fear or are you living in love? And that abundant love energy, that philosophy is exactly what you're talking about. I want to be around that. I want to collaborate with that. And then which ultimately develops you, right? You become more successful and more talented and all that.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, that's not to say it's not like that some effort doesn't have to be put into it sometimes, you know, like, but I do try to be conscious of like jealousy or those types of emotions and really try to flip them on their head and become like more collaborative, because that's always been one of my favorite things about music is being able to work with other people that bring completely different skill sets to the table and complement mine in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and often, because I work with, I think I mentioned I work with women, oftentimes with confidence issues, and they can be powerful women, talented women, and there's this, I'm faking it, I'm not really feeling it. And oftentimes that I'm not feeling it is coming from, we all have heard the term imposter syndrome. I can't be them. I can't be that. They're better. Who do I think I am to be in this position? And one of the things that I encourage women, because women in particular can be highly competitive with other women. And one little practice, start complimenting the other woman in the one thing that you're most insecure about. And even better if you can compliment them publicly. Now it has to be authentic. It can't just be this false, but just that, transferring that jealousy and that sort of what it causes inside, that fear, insecurity, and putting it onto the other person, like really admiring them authentically, it's very transformative for what happens then on the inside of us. And I just love how you're describing it, how for you it becomes, there might be a twinge of like, oh gosh, but then it's, I will be better. I will be, I will grow as an artist if I can be part of what that is that I wish I had more of.
Right. Yeah. No, that's like a great exercise. And I think it's, exactly what what I've had to, it's almost, you have to do that in Nashville to not feel completely overwhelmed by how many incredibly talented people there are around you.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I think it's a good thing too, because I think I've grown as a musician from the talent around me. And, it's that's a benefit of living in Nashville. I think there's a flip side to that coin.
So one of the other things you mentioned, as you see people who are so much more technically, skilled than you, is that it's about my style, my own artistry, how I evoke an emotion, how I connect with an audience. So, because obviously we're all unique. We all bring our own set of talents, gifts, perspectives. So then as an artist, how do you cultivate that?
That's a hard question. I think, I think everyone has their own theories with this type of thing, because it is very ethereal, like the muse, and how do you, what is creativity? Where does it come from? And my belief is that it, your voice kind of comes from your inspirations, and deep diving into I think of all the different phases I went through musically in high school, went through a phase where I was listening to punk music, and never went through the metal guitar phase, but I have a lot of friends who did. But I think all of it kind of comes out eventually as this as your own taste. And at some point you stop trying to emulate things, and it just becomes this mash of all your inspirations. But I do think it requires those deep dives into things that you feel passionate about, and learning all the music on the CD, or reading a book from this person that you admire, and hearing about their life, and becoming a little bit obsessed with the people that are creating things that you love. And I think that's where your individual, because that's the thing, there's no one in Nashville that had the same experiences that I had. I have friends, like I was saying, who have these musical families, and they have a completely different identity. Not to say it's better or worse, it's just but it's resulted in a different voice, and that's kind of beautiful in a way. It's what makes us all unique. But I do think it's kind of those musical phases that came out, to be who I am and what I do today.
Yeah. So I talk about that because I help women sort of uncover their voice, because you say you have to listen to your voice. Well, some people don't even hear their voice.
Right.
They've either spent so much of their life taking care of other people. Maybe they're in the motherhood phase, or maybe they just didn't have, they were in a survival mode in their life. But I say dabbling is the way I describe it. You have to just start dabbling, just trying the different things, exploring, experimenting, and then sort of what bubbles up or what resonates. I guess this may be, you talked about all this as a bit ethereal, like inspiration and creativity, and how do you really define it or describe it? Where does it come from? And for you, you said it's about, using my voice, being obsessed. How do you even hear your voice? How do you even know what to be obsessed about?
I don't know exactly. But I also don't think it's always been like clear, like this is my voice. I think there's a lot of copying, honestly, at the beginning. Like, looking back at like I said, the phases I went through in high school. And like I think what I was doing is I was trying to emulate the people that I liked, if I liked this punk band, I wanted to start a punk band that sounded exactly like them, and I wanted to be that person in a sense. And there wasn't even it wasn't my voice really back then. It was me copying people probably, I just think after doing that for so many years but I at the core of that is just, I really like something, I like this song. I'm going to learn all the chords to it and I'm going to sing it. And you might be singing it the exact same way or trying to sing it the exact same way as the original artist. But eventually after doing that, you sing maybe a Stevie Wonder song and then you sing, I don't know, like a One Direction song, eventually after doing all these different styles and doing these deep dives, it's like, oh, you are kind of like piecing together your own creative spirit. I think it's but I do think it comes a bit from like trying to be like, I feel it's funny, I see a lot of similar strings around like musicians my age. Like I feel like a lot of guitar players went through a John Mayer phase where they learned all John Mayer's songs because he's incredible and tried to sound exactly like John Mayer, got the Strat and a lot of us have, evolved from that, but I can, sometimes see little pieces of it. And that's always fun too, like learning music history and stuff, because you'll see inspiration sometimes pop out and I don't think it's always intentional, but maybe that's what our voice is. It's just a combination of all these little things that we like coming through and combining.
I love that. And you think of the greats, they always are referring to their influences and what they listen to, in their evolution as an artist. And they're always, the sound or the style has an influence from that.
Yeah. I don't think creativity happens like in a vacuum. I think it happens by being surrounded by other art, by other people's creations and not being afraid to, deep dive into them, like learn them and pretend that you're them,
right.
For a second, or, playing in a cover band and, trying to sound like Dave Matthews or I don't know. I do think like, you'll eventually come out of that because you aren't Dave Matthews or whoever, is your like, musical inspiration at the time. But I do think you take a little bit away from that like phase and bring it into your own creation.
Right. And also I just want to, kind of repeat back what you said about, you've used words like be obsessed. You talk about, the deep dive, you talk about the process, sticking with it. So there's a lot of just showing up for yourself, showing up for your creativity and doing the work is part of the process of discovering and that confidence, that clarity, I think comes from the process.
Yeah, I think, there's a grind aspect to it. always, at least for
Oh, I
doing
thought
this
it
as a
was
living.
meditative. Now you're saying it's
Yeah,
a
I know.
grind.
Yeah, it's a combo. I mean, but I do think I try really hard to have a play aspect to my approach. Like, even if I'm working on something all day and, it is technically work, quote unquote, um, I do try to approach it like I actually have a visual memory of this moment in high school where I had this like punk band that we were actually really bad. But there was like this moment in like someone's like basement and we were like all playing and we were jamming. And it literally, I felt like it felt like a drug. Like I was just so in the moment 100% and like, I remember just like having this like out of body experience of like, this is so much fun. Um, and I feel like we're making like really cool stuff. It wasn't very cool, but but like I think about that moment a lot, and I want to be in that headspace all the time
Yeah.
when I'm working. Like, even if it is quote unquote work, I really try to have that mentality when I approach it. Like, really just like enjoy it. But
Yeah. I so relate to that. It's that moment of flow, that it's the rush, it's the like feeling like you're doing what you're meant to do.
right. And I also want to say, like, there are plenty of moments where I'm not in that. And like, it is hard sometimes, but I do think like that should be like the goal. And I think that's the key to doing it, to being able to do it over the long run and not get exhausted from it.
Yeah, I guess that would lead me to another question about, okay, so what do you do when you're in a creative rut?
Oh, it's hard. I think you got to switch gears. That's always been my thing. If I have writer's block or just don't feel inspired, you got to like switch gears. You got to learn to play drums. You got to, you got to watch Netflix or read a book or, be inspired by something that's completely different than what you're supposed to be inspired by.
And what for you does a creative rut feel like? Like, how does it show up?
I mean, it's difficult. I have them all the time. I feel like, personally, it's stressful, especially when you're doing it for a living. It's scary sometimes. It's, when you're sitting there all day and can't come up with anything and you're just like, oh my gosh, like, and then there's like the fear of like, oh, will it ever, come again? Like, yeah, creative ruts are, I mean, even scarier now, like when you do it for a living. But I mean, I have them, quite often, especially when you do it every single day. I think there has to be like a trust that like, you're not always going to be in a creative rut. Sometimes it's switching gears is even like, learning, like not even like reading or immersing yourself in like art. Sometimes it's just like learning, like watching, I don't know, a video on how to make a website or something.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
something completely different. And where you're not focusing on like how it's not working.
Yeah.
I've also found I mean, you're always kind of unlocking different parts of your creativity and how it works. But for me personally, I find I'm way more creative at night when I'm like
Mm-hmm.
slightly tired and less judgmental of myself, because I'm tired and want to go to sleep. But for some reason, I'm able to write a lot better. Like, I'm able to write lyrics a lot easier. I think it's because my um, inner critic becomes quieter at night. But I know people that like to write first thing in the morning. It's kind of figuring out what works for you. But it is a constant challenge of like, it's not like this, like my creativity is like this stream that's constantly flowing all the time.
Right. It's like a relationship you have. The ebbs and flows. Like, how's creativity doing today? I don't know. Let me check.
Yeah, it
She's
is.
in a bad mood, so we're gonna
Yeah.
go watch some Netflix.
And yeah, and but it is also like humbling when it's like, not always there.
Yeah.
So, um,
But I love Megan how aware you are though, and how you are very sensitive to your own creativity in that night is better, don't judge this. Fear's coming in, panic is coming in, go drum. So,
Yeah.
And again, I'm sharing that back because I just think that's helpful for other people, our listeners, to hear that we all experience these moments of self-doubt, of the inner critic, and it's really trying to understand our own ebbs and flows. Yeah.
Right. And yeah, I mean, it's funny because, I've been doing this for a while. And so whenever I like recap even my own story and stuff, sometimes I feel like I need to give the disclaimer that it was not all like, there's been a ton of disappointments and there's been a ton of, moments where I've been insecure and unsure. And, part of the reason my sister and I sing together and got started singing together was because I was too shy to sing by myself. Like I would book these coffee shop gigs and then I'd be terrified and make my sister sing them all the songs, just play guitar in the background. But there's been a ton of like confidence shaking moments. And I think when you write your bio or tell your story, you only talk about like the big cool things that
part,
and the great moments, and but all that other stuff is very, very much there as well.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so much here to talk about. We're gonna start to wrap it up a little bit, but I just want to pull something you just said, that the vulnerability of being visible, that it was too difficult, that you put your sister out front. That is, but again, how but you've slowly been able to step to the center stage.
Yeah, I'm definitely not the person that loves being the center of attention. Honestly, it sometimes makes me nervous. But it's something I got to balance a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge social media requirement for my line of work, and it's something I'm always trying to find the right balance of, because I also know that I can't, like, it's not my favorite part of my job, and it's definitely just not as suited to my personality, actually. So,
well, and that's something that I've always said, is that it's show business, and business is the longer word.
Yes.
It takes up a lot of our energy as artists. And do you do that yourself, or do you have support?
I've tried different kind of support as far as like social media goes, but honestly, it's hard because you want it to be your voice, and like,
for sure.
Although people are always like, you got to post X amount of times a week, it's like, well, if it's something that I'm not, like, that doesn't sound like me, or just, I don't know, like it's really hard. And I'm not a social media guru, and probably my social media numbers are not as consistent as like my YouTube or Spotify numbers when it just comes to like straight music. But yeah, I think that's something I'm actually trying to figure out at this point in time in my career is because for the longest time it was like I need to get paid. I need, like, the only goal was to do music for a living. Like, that's it. There's no other like dimension to that. Like, there was no like, I just was trying to play music. And but then after doing this for 5, 6, 7 years, it becomes like, oh, okay, like, what parts of my job do I actually like? Like, do I want to produce music? And I like being in the studio, but I don't enjoy the social media aspects as much. And I don't know.
As we wrap this part of the conversation, I just want to know, sort of like, what's on the horizon? What are the dreams for the future?
Ooh, it's hard. Like, kind of to what I was just saying, like, that was the goal for so long, was just to do music full time, to get paid. And like, when I went to college, not to go on a tangent, but when I went to like one of my first music business classes, I remember them being like super discouraging. They were like, look, if you're getting into music for money or anything like that, like the industry has been dying. Like, there's a third of the record deals in Nashville that there used to be. The opportunity is not there. The money is not there. Like, so I really was like, okay, if I can just like, pay my rent, pay for food, and play music, then that was the goal. And anything above that, like I didn't even imagine, and now that I finally do kind of have that a bit more stability, it does kind of become of like, okay, what is the goal? And the pandemic has definitely given me the pause to figure that out. And, I think what I've realized is I love performing. I love touring. I love writing songs. I love working with other musicians. So it is kind of along the lines of what I've been doing the past couple of years, and but I also love evolving. Like I love feeling like I've gotten better, and that, the videos have gotten better, and that kind of chasing those creative strings wherever I feel like they're going. But
yeah,
so I
for
think it's
you,
a lot of the same thing.
Yeah. So for you, I'd say the journey is the destination. The journey is the dream.
It is. It really is. Continuing the journey, as long as I can keep it going.
Yeah.
That's kind of the thing, I've been working in my little studio here for the past couple months on some new original music, but also, doing a lot of covers and, but really it is honestly about the journey at this point, and continuing to do everything that I love. And the music industry changes really quickly. Like Spotify wasn't even the thing when I started, and now it's kind of the bread and butter for me and most people I know in the industry. So you never know what the next YouTube is going to be, or now there's TikTok and things like that. But sometimes if it feels overwhelming to think about like how much is changing, it does help to be able to just focus on, the song I'm working on right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So Megan, how can people, you mentioned Spotify, give us a couple ways people can find you, listen. We'll share lots in the show notes, but maybe just a quick shout out.
Yes. So, I try to have my music almost everywhere you can find music, at least online. So Spotify or Apple Music, you can find it under Megan Davies. The videos that were kind of my my platform, I guess, on YouTube, my original platform. It's all under, youtube.com/Megan Davies. And then I have a website at megandaviesmusic.com.
Awesome. It was a pleasure. I really, really loved hearing like the kind of behind the scenes journey.
Absolutely. It's a great conversation.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of She Made It. Our goal is to reach as many women as possible through this podcast to inspire them to find their truest, most creative selves. And we need your help. Apple Podcasts is way more likely to put our show on other people's radar if we have reviews. If you've enjoyed even just one episode of She Made It, we'd be so honored if you left a review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes. It's easiest to do this through the Apple Podcasts app on your phone, and if you're not sure how, just go to elzerman.com/review if you need some instructions. Thank you so much in advance. We cannot wait to hear from you.